All right, it's sending data, so you can probably start.
Sounds good. All right. Welcome to the 28th meeting of the Junto Club, where we are inspired by an original Junto Club founded by Benjamin Franklin about 300 years ago to discuss topics such as science, technology, politics, and businesses. So today's topic, we're going to go into business of robotics, mostly focus on the startup of like robotic startups. And of course, the main purpose of this episode is for for me to figure out for with the help of Dr. Mike Pedinati and Matthew O'Brien to help me figure out what robotic company I should start personally. So it's based mostly for personal interest. So yeah, so before we get into the robotic business stuff, so let's go into, we usually start with a quote from Benjamin Franklin, and today's quote is, quote, "In rivers and bad governments, the lightest things swim and top," end quote. Any thoughts, guys?
I'm just going to the document to look up exactly what it is. In rivers and bad governments, the lightest things swim to the top.
I think you know how easy stuff gets passed by Congress and then like the serious difficult things get ignored or aren't dealt with.
Okay.
This is it. It's kind of it's analogous to like the flow of least resistance. Just what's easy gets done, gets taken care of, and then what's hard, maybe more important, doesn't. That's what I think it means.
No, I think that's a good one.
Okay, is that your interpretation, Mike, as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. That basically sort of the light, fluffy stuff gets sort of the light, fluffy is another way of saying easy. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It also means I think I feel like the lightest thing could be just like focusing on short-term stuff as well, right? So, but yeah, I think I guess my thought is maybe short-term stuff, but I think your interpretation is correct. It's not just easiest things that get done first. Yeah. So okay. All right. Another question. I guess so. Last week, Matt had been saying that the quote from Benjamin Franklin had been, the quality of quote had been going down the drain. So what do you think about today's quote?
It wasn't as decipher, or some of the other ones have gotten a little weird where I really don't know. I don't think any of us really knew what they were trying to mean. This one was straightforward at least, but was it interesting or insightful? I'm not so sure.
That's fair. Yeah, for me, the reason I picked it because I guess I was a little bit confused. I'm not sure, and I usually, the way I pick it is usually sometimes I don't know what it means, so that's why I confuse me. And sometimes if I like no code, I will bring it up. So anyway, that's my simple process of filtering it. All right, so regarding like mental models about decision making, right? Last week I started talking about like how to make decisions and using mental models. And I think this week for me, I came across a very simple question to ask yourself before you're making a decision. And the question is, quote, "Is this going to make the future easier or harder?" End quote. What do you think of that question? Like, for example, like when you try to make a decision, maybe when you are, I don't know, in a grocery store or something, you want to, grab a Coke or something, right? You can ask yourself, is this going to make the future easier or harder, right? So I don't know.
I mean, I guess it's useful, but I mean, well, it's a good question, but it's too high level.
What do you mean?
I mean, is this going to make the future easier or harder? I mean, it doesn't give any type of indication of like the time scale you're like, what is the future, right? I mean, grabbing okay, yeah, if you're like, say you've had like no calories today,
Yeah.
and you're sort of like a little bit dehydrated, and oh, it's like I want a like I need a Coke, or I need something to like quench my thirst. It's like, I mean, that's not a big deal. But I'm trying to use that example, but like it's a good question in the sense of like, should I study hard in school?
Yeah.
Is this going to make the future easier or harder? Well, the first 30 years of your life harder.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if you live beyond that, then it's going to be probably make it easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people aren't in school for 30 years, Mike.
All right. Well, the three of us were, so it's.
All right.
I'm reading the room, but I guess basically, like, so if it's a question like that, like, is studying hard gonna like make your life easier or harder? Probably easier. Like, or but that is assuming you're going to live a long time. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily like I feel like there's a lot more that goes into thinking, like, a lot more goes into defining what is the future in the particular context.
Yeah, it's very personal. All right. What about you, Matt?
So I think it's a good thing. It's a decent question to ask because it helps you, it frames the issue in a certain way, very forward thinking way, like looking long term, as Mike says. For me though, I ran through some of the things where I like think about a little bit. I'm like trying to make a decision. And for most decisions I make, I feel like the answer is neutral. They don't really make the future easier or harder in any meaningful sense.
Do you have an example?
Especially, it's like, should I buy this thing that's, sub $100 for entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Or something fun, like a small splurge, right? Is that gonna make my future easier or harder? No, it's not really that big of a difference. It's what I'm really looking for is like, is it worth this, to me? Which is a different question.
I would say this question is not applying to all decisions, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it's not applicable to all situations. It's more focused on like, go ahead, keep going. You're gonna say?
No, yeah, I agree. I think mostly it would apply to more serious things. It could also apply to smaller things too, like if you bought something that's like a useful tool, right, for cooking, to make cooking easier. And that could encourage you to cook more and eat out less. But
okay,
like it's not bad advice. I just think it's probably not relevant in the majority of decisions you make.
Okay. And what question do you ask yourself then? All right, actually, let me go my interpretation. I mean, the reason actually I like this question because personally, I have a tendency maybe to focus on short term instead of long term, right? So this question always like, is this gonna make the future easier or harder? Now, if you go for something that is like tendency to get short term, right? As Mike said earlier, right? You want to do the easy thing, but actually in the future it make it harder. For example, like, because I have a tendency, for example, to avoid conflicts, right? For example, interpersonally, like maybe with you guys, right? Sometimes I will not say something even though because I want to avoid conflict and I want to, don't want to offend, not offending, but just to be nice, right? So don't want to, if maybe there's something that I feel like, is not going well, I try not to say it, not to give that critical feedback, say, hey, maybe this is not good, right? So I'll try to avoid that, but even by doing that, actually, I'm focused on the short term, right? This is easier for me to avoid this conflict right now, but actually, if by avoiding it, I'm making the future harder, right? So those kind of, so personally for me, that's why I like this question, because as I say, I have tendency to focus on the short term instead of long term sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, if that's your tendency, it's definitely a good idea to try to think about that more. Although I will say, I think most people often default to trying to avoiding conflict. Like I think that in particular for interpersonal stuff, that's very common. And this is actually a good thought for that, where questioning like, is avoiding a conflict now just going to make the relationship or issues worse in the future?
Yeah.
That might be a good way to encourage people to be like, let me take that uncomfortable step and address this issue. I like it for interpersonal
PhD
stuff.
thesis that like you could cite when you're discussing this.
I'm not talking about a robot helping you.
That's mine. That's what you studied for your PhD thesis, right? Conflict resolution.
It was related.
I see.
It was essentially it, but
you had a different take on how to help conflict resolution, I believe.
Well, I mean, yes, because it incorporate like a robot was essentially being like, is there emotion to deal with now? It was the one asking the question.
So the
Yeah.
robot was thinking, is this going to make the future easier or harder?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Maybe robot should ask this question for your study
Yes.
during
Yes.
during your experiment. Yeah.
No, that's essentially the underlying what do you call the mediation literature. That was what it was all about, is people avoiding conflict or people placating others because they don't want to have overt conflict.
I would say this question is also relevant when you think about, and it's right now for me as well, and I'm thinking about, whether should I get a like career wise, right? Should I start my own business, which is very hard, or should I do something that maybe find a job in a company, like be comfortable and then all secure, like taking risk a little bit in the beginning, even though it's really hard. And then I don't know, I'm not sure if this question is appropriate, but it kind of made me think about that too, right? If I start my own business, I learn a lot of stuff. It's gonna be hard, but in the future it might be easier. I don't know. I'm not sure if this is appropriate question, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good question, but there are times you might want to do set yourself up for something harder for the benefits, right? But you should be probably like prepared mentally, be like, okay, I'm actively choosing the thing that's going to be more difficult for these reasons, because when it gets hard, then you'll be able to think about why you made that decision, why you should persevere.
Right. Yeah. Now, like I said, I mean, I do think I said this very poorly earlier, but it's a good question. Like, it's good to think long term. It's not necessarily good to think long term all the time, as we've discussed, like for every decision. But course. I do think, yes, like, I mean, like, so I keep going back to like, the study hard in school or whatever, like, or to get educated in some capacity is like that, I guess, has a lot going for that, in the sense that it's like low risk, and like there's a pretty clear track record of like that helping, like education helping with career and everything else. So, I mean, I think that's like an easy sort of long-term decision to make, whereas something like starting a business, one, you would need to consider like short-term, do I have the energy to do it? And two, like that's more of a high risk, like as we've talked about previously and probably today too. Like, like, I mean, is it the people, the idea, like the timing, like there's a bunch of different factors that could backfire. So
exactly. So this question is just one tool, I guess. So that's why the reason of mental models, you want to have multiple of them, so you can pick which one you want to use for different situation. And this is just one of them. And in the future, I'm gonna introduce more. So that's good. So let's get into Olympics, I guess. Just a smaller type, the mini topic before we get into the main topic today, the Olympics. So did you guys watch Olympics?
I've watched a little.
Matt, you're not watching at all?
No, I've seen a few clips on YouTube from where Americans win a gold in some random sports, but not much.
What event would you usually watch? What's your favorite event?
I mean, my favorite event is the Winter Olympics curling, but when I watched,
What, you serious?
Yeah, curling's awesome. Okay, but
wait, you joking, right?
No.
What do you mean no?
I mean, it's not like I go watch it a bunch winter either, but it's like curling's the best. Come on, who doesn't get excited for curling?
Nobody.
They sweep so vigorously as they go down the thing.
Nobody gets excited about curling.
They bump the rock, the stone out and get, remove the other guy's score. All games should let you remove the other team's scores if you score even better. Like that should just be a feature.
It's like sort of a cornhole on ice.
Yeah.
So, but now, I mean, curling, I feel like is the like Olympic sport everyone points to as like the sport they get hyped about like every 4 years, but like forget about otherwise. But I mean, I feel like
do people really get hyped about curling?
Oh yeah. But no, it's definitely people do. But I feel like it's because people look at it and they're like, yeah, I could do that. Like
I could do that. I mean, they probably could, maybe not as well, but you could do it. Where most other things, like you're like, oh yeah, he's throwing himself off bars into the air. Like, yeah, I could do a pull up. Like I
Right.
can't, spin around it.
Right. Right. No, I mean, I think like swimming, gymnastics in particular,
Yeah.
I mean, sprinting obviously like everyone can do, but it's like these like the athletes are just basically at a point where it's like the apex of what the human body is capable of. Like their bodies are physically perfect, like for doing this particular thing.
So
So
what's your favorite event to watch?
I mean, winter hockey and summer
Oh.
basketball. I mean, I'm boring. I like American sports. Like I'm boring. I like sort of our four major sports. So
Okay.
like I watch those in the Olympics.
Got you. We're talking about summer right now, but winter is fine too, I guess. But if you could go back in time, which event would you like train yourself in? Like if you go back to your 6 years old, and which
I feel like
do you think?
Swimming, probably.
Swimming. Okay.
I mean, I swam a lot as a kid, and I feel like gymnastics, it helps to be smaller. So assuming I'm like roughly the same height, then I don't think I would be good. Like, I don't think I would be at an Olympic gymnast level. And like running, I don't know. I've never particularly liked running.
Well, I mean, I guess don't imagine you as you. Imagine you are someone that is like, I don't know, perfect, I guess. Like which event would you put yourself in?
I'm still I feel like swimming.
Still swimming?
I feel like I don't know how much you've been watching, and I haven't watched a ton, but I feel like every time I turn it on, it's like a swimming competition or swimming event that's on. I feel like it gets a lot of press or a lot of play during the Summer Olympics.
So you want a fame, that's why.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What about you, Matt?
Rings.
Rings, yeah.
The gymnastic rings.
Mm-hmm.
You see how built those guys are? They look like superheroes in real life. If I would have been training like that since I was a little kid,
Yeah.
I'd be built like a gorilla. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Same here, actually. I was debating between rings or like bars, right? Like doing all those bars and but besides that, definitely gymnastics. Yeah, I would put myself into that actually. Yeah. I feel like there's something that you gain a lot of long-lasting benefit. Like even if you get older, right, you can still like do split, still pretty healthy, good posture, all the stuff. Yeah. Knowing like maybe know how to fall, So.
Yeah.
Great.
Did you ever do gymnastics when you were like a little kid, Mike?
No. I mean, basically just I mean like the basics, I guess, like the balance beam and stuff like that, but nothing.
Oh, balance beams.
Yeah.
Isn't that dangerous for boys?
We had to do it in you didn't do it in elementary school gym?
I grew up in China. We don't have anything. We don't even have a gym.
Didn't you win? China just won gold.
They take like some kids and put them into like an Olympic training school, but they don't train everyone.
Right.
Much more efficient for winning medals.
In the 90s in China, it was rural area, and we only have one classroom per grade, and there's no gym at all. So, and most gyms are not even indoors or outdoor. Now you just go to the yard and play.
Choose exercise was walking to the well and pulling up a bucket of water.
Actually, I did that sometimes. Actually,
I did know, that was not just a joke. You told us.
No, it's not.
Yeah, you have told us that. Yes.
Yeah, in the village, actually, we washed the clothes in the river, right? So next to the well, actually. So. Yeah.
So you did laundry and then you got you got
drinking. You have a bucket with you, right? The river, the well is right next to the river, so yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Also, hold on. Lee Kiefer became the first American to win a gold in fencing, or individual fencing, foil at least. I did see that.
Oh yeah.
Why didn't you pick fencing, Matt? You actually did that.
Yeah, I mean, I did it for like one semester. But I mean, if I was gonna pick, it's fun, but it's not what I would pick if I could be an elite Olympic athlete at something.
Yeah. It's also like super narrow, right? Gymnastics, you basically like full body functional, right? So
Yeah.
That's
All
fun.
right.
that's cool.
Well,
Also Lee Kifler, I think she's a doctor too. I think she's going to be a doctor anyway. So that was impressive as well. She was
ooh.
doing the training and going to medical school at the same time. Yeah, and that's one thing about U.S. American athletes, right? And it's in China, I think they're very narrowly trained. Like they take you into a technical, like basically school like that, to just train on a sport. So in the future, when they finish sport, it's very hard for them to move on into something else. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about robotics.
Okay.
All right. Hey, this is a topic we actually have somewhat expertise on for once, instead of just spitballing.
We've read like 3 academic papers over a week and
or a book on the subject. We're like,
Yeah.
now we understand this. Let us explain it.
Yeah. So I have a structure of discussing this, but before I want to go into my first question is, how would you structure this discussion?
Maybe you should mention what the discussion is.
Yeah.
It's robot businesses. Oh yeah, the main topic is about robot business, right? Now, startups, different industries. Because I mean, you guys, we've been studying robotics for a long time, and then we probably have some inklings of what application robot is good for. And as I say earlier, the main thing for this discussion is to help me figure out which robot company should I start, right? So anyway, free consulting from you guys, from 2 PhDs. So yeah, just like basically it's giving an overview of all the different robotic startups, different industries, and then I was wondering, how would you guys structure the conversation?
So robotics, I think, is actually easier than some other areas to think about, because there's at least a big thing that's really important, right? Labor cost. If what you're getting into, the labor costs are a big chunk of the cost of the business, robotics probably makes sense. And then the second question is, can you actually replace those labor costs with a robot? But so I mean, that's where the gold mine's going to be, right? Because there's industries where labor costs are not a big portion because they're already using very expensive machines or materials, so it's not that big of a deal to have a person operate it. It's like functionally a much smaller slice. It's not that you couldn't potentially gain profits from robots there, but you're not going to get as much for your investment probably. So labor cost.
So that's I guess
that's what I would say.
Okay, well, I thought maybe it was a higher level question, like basically like so I guess you're starting where I would start, which is basically like, what are the problems like that are in sort of like sort of what are the problems that exist that robots would be profitable for, or like in like the areas in which they could be applied, like then what solutions already exist in those areas, and then where those solutions fail, I guess, would be sort of like where you come in. So I mean, I was thinking about like how to structure the discussion. It would be that order, I guess.
Yeah, Matt, I think you're more focused on when you, instead of like structuring a conversation, is more like focus on the robotic companies to start, right?
Oh, yeah, I think I misunderstood your question. I thought you were saying, how would you structure, like thinking about what businesses to start or invest in?
Yeah, no,
Whoops,
I'm talking about how would you structure a conversation today, like giving an overview of robotic business and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. So you want, I guess.
I guess my point. I want to get an idea. How would you structure the conversation to convey the idea, right? The concept and stuff like that. Now, how would you want to talk about this topic? I guess, like structure. How would you structure it? Yeah.
So just to be clear, the topic is what sort of robotic businesses are a good idea, like to either make or invest in, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess you structure the conversation by saying first, like on principles, what do you what do you think is a good idea? And then secondly, then evaluate what's out there already.
Okay. All right. What about if you just want to give you overview of the robotics industries?
I think you would just overview it. I don't think you need a structured conversation to overview the robotics industry. I think you could just say that.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, all right, let's get into. All right. So, of course. So, have you guys thought about starting a robotic company?
No.
And why not?
Because I think about whether a decision is going to make the future easy or hard. And that seems like it'd make my future very hard. No,
Why?
starting a company is expensive.
Yeah.
Robotics companies are definitely not the cheapest ones to start either. And I don't feel like I have enough practical experience yet to
Okay.
make that jump.
Yeah.
So I would rather, sharing my personal career plans on our public podcast, but I'd rather get a little more experience and work under other people to learn from them before I would try anything to venture out that far.
Okay. But in the future, it could, it could be a potential. Yeah.
If I see an opportunity that no one else is going for, maybe.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
No, I mean, at some point I would like to start a company, but I mean, I guess similar to Matt, like at this
But
point.
not a robotic company?
I mean, I guess robotic, like, I don't know. Like, I guess when I think of like robotics company now, I think of like automating, warehouses or like just like essentially automation more so than like, I mean, but certainly I think there are opportunities like that are coming in like healthcare and like human like technology like interaction that could be interesting. But
Okay.
I don't know. Yes, but again, it's sort of the money, like time and energy in this moment that keeps me from doing it.
Okay, so let's last two questions about this. If I give you $1 million, I guess, what robotic company would you start?
$1 million.
I mean, I just want to give you a big number. Just basically, you have enough funding, or just you can do anything you want, right? What robotic company would you start?
Is $1 million a lot of money though?
Well, just $1 billion. What about $1 billion?
Yeah,
billion.
You got an idea? Come on.
$1 million would definitely not be enough to start a robotics company, but yeah, Shu's point is a large amount of funding.
Imagine I'm Jeff Bezos or something. I can give you a lot of money you want, as much as you want.
It's a hard question to answer because I guess I haven't necessarily like what I think of like specifically with robots. I mean, I guess where my interests lie, I'm just not sure robots are good enough yet.
You mean like AI, like in the software wise, or mechanical, robotic, physical?
I'm guessing both.
Both. Okay.
I mean, just because I like the idea of robots being able to help people. Just in the sense of like, robots could be implanted in people to like monitor and, if you actually have like a robotic agent as opposed to just like a more passive monitoring, the robot could actually they always talk about like robots to clear out arteries that are getting clogged and, things like that. And I think that's really cool. I just don't have a really good sense at all of like how feasible that is in, 5, 10, 20, 30, like, the time span of when that would be feasible.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And mostly from, I think that a big part of that is I don't know where the hardware is to do that type of stuff. But I mean, yeah. I mean, I do agree with Matt's earlier point that a lot of like, if you gave me a large sum of money to start a company, I guess my first step would be like just identifying industries where yeah, people cost a lot. Those people are doing relatively low skill work, and trying to see if that could be automated.
So you mentioned people cost. What do you think Cafe X?
Cafe X, is
Yeah.
that the coffee place that's all robots?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean that's probably a good. I mean I don't know. I guess I feel like I don't know if they bombed or they're doing well, but I would imagine that's a good cost, unless sort of people, as in the people buying the coffee and customers, reject it because it's all robots.
So yeah, so they have imagine it's like a coffee stand, right? They have you see a robotic arm inside a glass window, right, making the coffee for you. You can order through the app, right? And then whoever the coffee, you can see the robot arm actually is basically you replace the barista with a robotic arm, basically just making the coffee for you, right? So there's a replacing the cost of that. What do you think? So yeah, what do you think, Mike? Well, I mean, what do you think, Matt?
I think that's a great idea. So I was looking at this because your link.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, first of all, again, I feel like that's an industry where the labor cost is reasonably high, right? The food industry employees are one of the bigger costs. Food is generally very cheap in the US. And then there's the other thing, if you look at it, it's much smaller. Like they can actually like fit it in a much smaller space than you would need for like a proper full-size store, which again could save a lot of money on like renting space or a building or whatever, and just makes it more convenient for the people who want to buy from it, right? Because it can be placed more closely, right? You can have one of those in a big office building rather than having to have people go across the street to Starbucks. And suddenly now it's more convenient and cheaper, if it can actually do the job well. I think that has just huge potential. I mean, I think there's always going to be a market for the Starbucks that you can go to and the people who want their friendly barista, but I could see these things getting a pretty big share of people who just like, I just want a coffee, like as quick and convenient as possible.
So my question for you is that, like, for this Cafe X company, like, what's the difference between that and then just a vending machine, right? So why do you need a robotic arm actually? Is that more for like people like novelty, like for people to look at, right? Because you could make the glass like just black, right? So people cannot see anything. You can just make it into a very smaller footprint, maybe just a vending machine, just spit out coffee, right? What's the difference between this and that? Why do you need a robotic arm in there?
I do think the biggest reason might be just to like look cool. Because when I looked at this, the first thing I thought was, why are they using all the coffee machines that are designed for people, right? You could make like an assembly line that just like, you don't need an arm, right? It's just assembly line runs the cups under the things that shoot everything you need into it, and then it just delivers at the end out. I mean, there's some advantages in reusing equipment that's already made and sold to a large degree, right? Rather than designing everything from scratch. They can buy a robot arm and then they buy normal coffee things and use them together. But I think, especially at scale, the other way would probably be cheaper, right? Not having the full robot arm. But I mean, companies pay a lot for marketing, right? If the fancy robot arm and the glass box gets people, interested, that's worth it. Could be worth it.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. What about a similar company, Bobachino?
Yeah, this looks like pretty much the exact same idea. The only difference is I don't think boba tea is nearly as popular as coffee is over here.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I don't know, it's getting pretty popular. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, yes, I agree. It's not nearly coffee, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, Bobachino basically is instead of coffee, they're doing bubble tea, right? One of the reasons I think they did say, because they want to, because it's not everywhere. Bubble tea is not popular because it's not everywhere, so they want to put bubble tea everywhere by using automated, put a robotic arm in there, stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a good idea.
yeah. As I say, I'm not sure. I mean, what's the difference between like this company and really just replace it with a very more efficient like vending machine, right? So anyway, so I think they do maybe as Matt said earlier, everything is off the shelf already. They can just put everything together, right? So
right. And I mean,
anyway.
certainly, I mean, I guess, I don't know, because I mean, a vending machine, right, is a very different, like it would need to be bigger than a vending machine, right? Like they would need like the they would
I don't
need
know.
like
I think you can design it to make it tiny. Like look at how tiny the iPhone is, right? If you can pack everything, if you design it correctly, you can probably pack everything. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking like the amount of ingredients they need. Like these restaurants probably want some sense of like to maintain like a sense of like, this is like a cafe with like seating, and you come here like to, get your coffee and do a little work or something.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah,
I could see,
yeah.
I could see them minimizing the space, but I mean, I think like part of it also is like these restaurants are like already like not only are the machines that make the coffee sort of bought and sold, but like already, but the I guess like the organization of the restaurants is sort of in place, right? Like they have certain storage areas for ingredients. They like the amount of ingredients to make the coffee is like pretty probably standardized at a lot of these places. So it's sort of like,
yeah.
I mean, I think you could shrink the components to make the coffee or make the boba tea or whatever, but like, I don't know, like the organization of the restaurants may be a little bit harder.
Gotcha.
So.
All right, going back to Matt's question, what robotic company would you start? We can skip it if you can't think of anything.
Me?
Yeah.
I would do one for something for the military.
Military? Why?
They have a big budget, so there's a lot that robots can do it's just they're expensive to make them do it, right? So making it viable, your budget's a lot bigger, and a high labor cost. Like using soldiers for things is very expensive, especially if there's any risk whatsoever that they could die, which comes into play semi-frequently for the job. So it costs a lot of money to train a soldier, and then they spend a lot more money trying to make sure there's no way they can die. So yeah, very expensive labor cost, big budget. That's where there's basically more drones.
Going for the money. I got you.
Well, I'm just saying, if you want to be successful.
I'm curious though about like, I mean, are you just gonna compete with like Raytheon directly though? I mean,
that's true. She said as much money as I want. So
okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
It's startup, right? So I mean, a lot of these big companies, they don't have the bandwidth to work on a lot of stuff, right? So there's a startup you can start and focus on something maybe small right now, right?
Yeah, you get in with one niche thing first, get your contracts and networking established, and then you expand out from there.
Yeah, cool. Well, if you want to look into that, there's a company called Shield AI. In the future, if you are interested, you can look into a future. But I did not really list it as a discussion company right now. But in the future, you could, when you're ready to look for a job. So anyway, I want to get into the restaurant space, right? So in the restaurant industry. So I guess my question for you is that what problem would you try to solve with robots for restaurants?
I already said it. Labor costs. I mean, that's the big thing, right?
So which problem? Which labor? Like if you can pick one problem, like which problem you can address?
Oh, wait, you mean like what type of job within restaurants?
Yeah.
I would say, I feel like ordering should be.
Ordering.
Yeah, I would say face-to-face service, ordering, and even bringing food, right? Like it'd be much easier for a robot to bring out food than it is for a robot to cook food.
I mean, I could see that. Like that's a harder problem. I feel like ordering, you build an iPad into the table, and then
that's already solved. A lot of restaurants already have that. Or why even do an iPad, right? Here's the QR code for our menu, and
I'm talking a problem that robot can solve, not ordering is like
This is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it is a solved problem, but I guess I guess why do restaurants continue to like, so I mean, you have the QR, like particularly during COVID, you scan the QR code with your phone, like it came up, and restaurants do have sort of, like either you can order on your phone or on like some type of iPad like thing that's on the table. Like, I guess why haven't they, like, why do they still often have like the server take your
Because
order? And I mean, I guess bringing it, I could see like the complications there, just because there are sort of restaurants can become like sort
so
of messy environments.
so there are companies are doing that right now, actually solving the exact problem, like bringing the food to you. Like I think it's some Bear Robotic or something like that. There's a Korean company. There's a company in US is doing that too. Yeah, and they just have, it's like a robot with multiple like trays on top, stack on top, and you just, I think it's really good for like pizzeria and stuff like that. So that's already been happening, right? So anyway, so yeah, for Mike, for you is serving, like kind of bring your food to you in the restaurant. What about you, Matt?
I was the one who said serving. Mike was saying ordering, which you don't even need a robot for.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
okay. So my the robotic company I picked for discussion today is Tube, actually. Chef Robotics and Miso Robotics. They are both try to do like cooking for you. So what do you think about that?
It's harder.
Why is it harder?
Well, because I mean, it's like I mean, there's just more complication, right? I mean, I guess depending on the like, I guess they may sort of retrofit the kitchen, like because I'm sort of thinking of sort of like the robotic arm, but maybe they sort of actually are taking the approach we talked about with coffee, where it's like they actually like basically have like here's the steaks lined up, and it's like they just shoot a steak into like a grill that comes down like this, cooks for the appropriate amount of time for the temperature that's input, like whatever the temperature the person ordered, it comes out the other side, and there's a scooper that just puts mashed potatoes on the plate and it's done. I don't know, like they could just change the kitchen, but
so you say harder problem. So I guess my question for you guys, is it harder to replace server or like waiter, right, a server, or replacing a cook, right, the chef? Which one is harder?
Cook.
Yeah,
the cook's harder.
I think hands down,
because I mean, think about it, restaurants you go to all the time. When the waiter or waitress changes, like you probably have one almost a different one every time you go in there. Like, how does that change your experience versus like, oh, the restaurant got a new chef. Oh, this restaurant is shit now. Like,
yeah, I think initially I was thinking about around the same line, but after I thinking about it, actually I might have a different opinions, because human robot interaction is very hard. Like ordering, right? You know, sometimes, I mean, if for example, if you put a robot in the restaurant, the human might expect to talk to the robot, and then if you don't, the behavior of how robot behaves can influence the human experience. So it might be harder to design it, and also the AI might be very hard to like understand what a human is ordering. Of course, I'm thinking that maybe instead of ordering, right, ordering through speech instead of like using an iPad and stuff. And then I feel like that might be harder, because actually, even though, so when I think about replacing the chef, actually cooking, I thought it was initially, I thought it was a very hard, challenging problem. And I realized actually you could control restaurant, like human you cannot control, right? But in a restaurant, just cooking, you can control the whole process. You can control the environment. So you can design an environment such that it might be easier for the robot maybe to focus on something very, like maybe one dish or something at the beginning. And so I think, so I guess my new opinion is maybe the cooking robot is not as hard as you imagine it to be. Because yeah, as I say, is the question is how much you can control over the task and the environment, right? And then if you're in the kitchen, I feel like you can design it such that it doesn't interact with anybody else, and everything is very deterministic, predictable. The environment, you make it structured such that it's predictable, so it might be easier. Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, I guess, well, one, my immediate reaction to that is like, if you're making the robot, right?
Yeah.
Like, or you're the robotics company behind this. You're not the restaurant. So it's
Mm.
like you're not setting, like, you need at that point, you need it. Like, what makes the cooking process very easy requires you to convince a bunch of restaurants to totally restructure their kitchens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times restaurant, yeah. So in the that is true, right? So if a restaurant is gonna adopt this technology, they need to design a restaurant such that it can use the robot, right? So those I think those it's a challenge problem. I mean, it's convince the customer, but in terms of robotics problem to solve, cooking and serving, I think cooking might be harder, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the
'cause
cooking might be easier. I mean,
so like I think I have to disagree. So ordering we already established. I mean, there's already places where you just order through an interface, right? So that makes the job of serving that a robot really has to do is literally just bring something from A to B. Just drive from A to B, not crashing into anything. You'd probably still want one physical hostess, kind of around in case someone has some issues. But cooking, like if you super narrowly define the cooking scope as like, oh, if there's a burger on the grill and it's holding a spatula, like a robot can flip it, right? Okay, yeah, that's not that hard. You can make a robot do that. But you said you don't want robots to interact with other people. So what happens when it needs more ingredients, right? Is there going to be someone who's constantly delivering exactly the ingredients right in its workspace to access? Because I assume the robot's not going to go back into the storage pantry, the storage fridge, whatever. What about cleaning everything, right? Is the robot going to clean the grill, every hour or so?
well, you're using it as a tool, right? It's like dishwasher. You load the dish into and then press a button, it goes, right? So
I'm just saying, like when you think about it, because cooking is a lot more than just like literally controlling the thing on the grill and putting it on a plate, right? There's a lot of just like other logistics in the back to manage when you're cooking. I mean, if you've cooked at home, often the prep and the cleanup usually takes more effort or time than actually cooking something. So you start having a wide variety of jobs, all of which are very difficult to make a robot do. And again, you either are left with having a robot do everything, or you start having a robot that has to work with people, which brings its own problems because now you got employees trying to interact with its workspace, and that creates, bits of danger and uncertainty that's going to increase your cost a lot.
Yeah, I'll say I bring up a point that you say I literally define a cooking robot as just flipping something. Yeah, but I think the way you define serving as well too, right? You are narrowly define it as just like ordering to an iPad and then just bring it out, right? But serving could be, if you go to high-end diners, right, you have different kind of serving, right? A robot coming out, maybe with arms or something, taking order for you, you will narrowly define it too, right? So
that's fair,
serving.
but I think, but like I mentioned, like what does it take to build a robot that isn't that narrow in a kitchen? It has to do a bunch of different tasks. But like I guess I feel like the serving robot's practical, right? You could have a functional restaurant with a robot that literally just brings the food out when they order it on an iPad. Because I mean, yes, sometimes some people are going to want interaction with their waiter, especially at like a high-end place, right? We're not going to have the robot suggest a bottle of wine and pour it for someone. Like we're not doing anything that complicated.
Yeah,
But there's a
yeah.
lot of places where I talk to my waiter 3 times. They like order, bring me my water or drink, and then bring me my food. Sorry, and then they bring the check out. That's like that's it. Like I see them 4 times
Gotcha.
for like the
Yeah.
basic things, and that's it. And it's
Yeah.
like that's probably the majority of the times I go to a restaurant. Maybe that tells you how much money I spend on high-end places. But I get that's easy. The first 2, ordering and paying, I don't need a human at all. And the second 2, they're just bringing me stuff. That's all they.
I mean, at high-end places, even they're just like that. They'll recommend you like our feature dessert or our feature bottle of wine or whatever. Like, I mean, I feel like on the iPad, like you could hit like recommend me, like there could be like a recommend me button and like some category, and the thing could be like basically say like our most expensive is our least expensive is like the preferred bottle of wine for 27% of customers, is this, like,
Yeah.
and it could give you, I mean, it probably could give you as much detail as you wanted. So,
yeah. So I want to say last comment is that I think chef like robotics. I think cooking application and serving, they are both might not be the right application for robotic in a restaurant. And the right application, actually, I saw a company that is doing pretty good. It's called Dishcraft. So basically, from the name, you probably can guess what it does, right? It basically does like focus on dishwashing robots, right? So I think feel like those actually tasks people I think maybe the industry is overlooking those kind of like other tasks. A lot of people when they think of a restaurant, they are serving or cooking, but they don't pay attention to the other stuff that actually needed to be done in the restaurant. So I think so. Yeah, I'll say one of my favorite company in this space is the Dishcraft.
I think that's better than cooking for sure.
Yeah.
I think I ignored it. Like I thought of it, but I was like, I feel like dishwashing is like hard. Like dishwashing in a particular like, I mean, I guess
because
if you're
it's because you're thinking about using robotic arms, right, to clean the dishes, pick it up, doing that, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Just because, like, again, unless there's like you're convincing restaurants to make a fundamental shift in like the functioning of their kitchens and probably the physical structure of them.
Mm-hmm. So what Dishcraft is doing now, I think he actually designed his own plates as well.
Okay.
And then he also basically almost like building a gigantic, like almost like dishwasher too. So it doesn't look like robotic, but it's automated, right? Kind of thing. Right. But it's still using robotic process to do it, right? So anyway, I don't think they are using robotic arms to do anything right now with the dishes. Yeah, that would be very hard. But we don't need robot arm to do that, right? To solve the dishwashing, right? So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm watching their video now.
Yeah. On
how they do this.
And I mean, I know there's a startup is also doing like dry cleaning too, like dry cleaning a robot. It's basically it doesn't, when you see it, it's not really it doesn't have robotic arms or anything. It's just a giant washer, right? Washer and dryer kind of thing, right? So dry cleaning machine, right? So
it looks like the Dishcraft, the idea there looks like basically you load, once you're done with your dishes, you kind of put them in something that kind of loads them in like a stacked individual kind of controlled thing so that the machine can pull one dish at a time and run it through some, pressure washing of hot soapy water real quick. So yeah, if they can make that work. And I mean, even if you need an employee to help, even if customers, don't put the plate right, you get an employee kind of like fix it and then they shove it into the dishwasher and it comes out already fully clean. That's like a lot of work saved.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, this is I think I like this company is because it made me think a little bit differently about the restaurant space. I was like, oh man, it's like what else have I not like talk about, right? So like what have I been missing, right? Like not thinking, maybe sometimes you have a shining object in this industry and you just focus on that, you are missing all the other things, right? So that's cool. All right. So next industry, agriculture. So what problem would you try to solve with robots for this industry?
I would want to, sorry, you should go first this time, Mike.
No, well, I mean, you solved a problem in this industry already, so
I did not. That's a different topic. But I mean, so I'm gonna break from my earlier rule, which I was like labor costs, because there are farming industries that involve like more human labor to pick stuff, and there's people who are working on robots to pick everything that humans pick. But for a lot of crops, I like the weeding robots, the ones that visually just run over, detect weeds, hit them with like literally sometimes they just have a metal spike and they just pow, spike them. First of all, saving a lot of cost on, weed killers and stuff like that. Second of all, you get to talk about how it's organic and good for the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not it's not trivial, but it's definitely not the hardest robotic problem, right? The big thing is you just got to be able to make sure you don't accidentally spike the good plant and then you can pretty much kill everything else you see.
Mm.
And again, you're not reusing a resource. You just need a little bit of power to chikung it.
Yeah.
And these are solar powered. You can charge them up too. Electricity doesn't cost much.
Nice. I forgot you have some inside information in this industry, kind of.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Mike?
I would probably make robots that look for pests and plants.
What? A pest in plants?
Yeah. No, that was Matt's PhD. But I mean, I actually don't know that it's a bad idea.
That was a hypothetical scenario I used in my PhD. I think it would actually be pretty difficult to have a robot detect and kill a pest on a plant. But I didn't have to make a robot do that, so it was okay.
See, this is again just me not knowing about like where costs in agricultural. I mean, because I feel like I mean I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? It's just labor costs, right? Labor costs is because right now is all. But our farms are. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say like there are very few small time farmers, right? Like I mean, most of production at this point is by massive farms, and I assume they use like a pretty high amount of automation to carry out what they do.
It depends what we're farming, because some stuff is just big tractor combines, and other stuff they have to have people out there actually picking it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Agriculture is an interesting industry because actually there's a labor shortage, right? A lot of Americans are not doing the farms, and then they, as you probably know, like even in Bush administration, they try to have like farm workers coming from like Mexico, right? Stuff like that, having like special visas to give them coming to do the work, right? So that means Americans are not really doing it anymore, right? So labor costs, definitely, yeah. So I want to go into a couple companies. One is called Burrow AI, which is basically Burrow is doing like very similar to like imagine a robot like wheelbarrow, right? It follows a human into like in the field, right? And a human like put like, for example, like grapes, right? Like grape harvesting, right? Human cut the grapes and put the grapes on top of a robot, and the robot just like transport it from back to the home station, I guess, right? And then follow the human again. Basically, instead of the human like carrying stuff back and forth, the robots do it for you. I feel like that's a very straightforward application, and it's very save our labor too. And then, right?
Yeah, no, I like that idea. I guess the only complexity is, well, I mean, the biggest complexity is sort of one, like the navigation. Like, are they losing? Like, I mean, I'm guessing these farms are not like perfectly flat terrain, so it's like keeping the thing balanced and getting it from point A to point B successfully.
That's a technical challenge. I think they can do it incrementally, right? Make it better. I think right now they have something that works pretty good. Of course, sometimes they, perception, sometimes they might lose the humor, might not be followed well. And then localization, sometimes like, no navigation, sometimes with the robot may be challenging, but I think they are doing a pretty good job right now in that area. So.
Yeah. I mean, staying with the human. And I mean, honestly, like when I think about this, I would almost want two like wheelbarrow robots per person. Like one stays with them, like basically gets to a point where it's like say 80% full, and it uses like some type of communication, whether like some type of communication to like let the like next wheelbarrow know that it's almost full.
Yeah.
And then that wheelbarrow comes to like meet the human, so the human can just continue seamlessly, and then the other one goes back and drops off the fruit.
Wow, nice. Multi-robot coordination right there.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So that's good. That's good. Maybe Burrow is listening, so maybe they will adopt your strategy. So the other company actually is called Tortuga Tech. I think they basically just doing a strawberry harvesting robots, right? So right now, as I mentioned, like Burrow AI is just like human doing the picking, right? Now, I mean, I think there's a lot of other robotic company, instead of just carrying stuff around, actually the robot is doing the picking as well, like peppers, right, or grapes, strawberry, and this company actually is doing like strawberry picking, right? Kind of strawberry harvested, right? So these are stuff that are very, Anyway, any thoughts?
I mean, I would need to see how good it is at picking. I think Burrow is it's a it's a better idea because it's a very much solved robotics problem. So it can really help human labor be much more efficient by working with humans. So humans do what they're best at, and robots do what it's best at. Just carrying something heavy around from A to B. A robot's good at that. Yeah, for picking strawberry, I mean, yeah, if you can effectively replace, people having to hand pick fruit, that's obviously a lot of labor, but how good is it? And how expensive is it to make it good? I'm the Burrow one, that to me seems like a easy win, while this one's like maybe.
Yeah, because I don't know if how recently you both have been fruit picking, but I went within the last year, and especially picking berries, it's a lot of lifting lower branches up, or lower, it's lifting and sort of moving around a lot of sort of low and high branches to try to see under them is often where a lot of the fruit is. So it's often sort of hidden. It's not like it's just sitting in plain view. So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of manipulation that would make this reasonably hard.
I mean, if you take a lesson from Amazon, look at what they do in their warehouses, right? I mean, it's not farming, but they have the Kiva system robots that haul things all around, and they actually bring all the shelves to a person, and they have the person do the pick and place, right? Grab things out, put it in a box. That's much more similar to the action of harvesting a plant, right? And then they bring this, and then they bring the stuff away with robots too. So they optimize as much as possible around the task the human has to do, which is that actual grabbing stuff. And yeah, if anything, taking fruit off out between branches and stuff might be more difficult than just grabbing the package, box. Maybe it's about the same difficulty. I don't know. But just looking at what companies have already successfully done,
Yeah, no, they could put I feel like, a human just on I don't know. I just want the fields to be fully automated. It's just the humans on a belt, sitting on some type of conveyor belt. They just are sitting there, they picking the fruit, they're just dropping it next to them. A conveyor belt's carrying it off to dump it into some big pit outside the field.
I think there's a couple of companies that are doing something that instead of deploy robot into existing farms, they kind of create a farm from the ground up in terms of robotics, right? So they create big, gigantic, almost greenhouse, robotic greenhouse almost in a way, right? So there are a couple of companies that are doing that already. But anyways, I think Matt was talking about a warehouse. That was a perfect transition to warehouse robotics. So what, when you think about warehouse, you were talking about earlier about we already have our existing system that's moving things around, Kiva system, right? Bring the shelf to the humans. So besides that, what other problem would you try to solve with robots in the warehouses? Can you think of anything that you might think could be good?
The picking and boxing problem that Amazon and Google have been researching and working on for a while now, trying to replace that human who's putting stuff in a box from other boxes.
Yeah,
that seems like the big one, because I've seen a video of inside the Amazon stuff, huge sections of their warehouses are already automated. So if you solve the pick and place, they might be nearly end to end, no humans needed, just supervising.
So yeah, there company doing that right now. Actually, one robot is called Pico Robotics, and another Dexterity AI is doing that too. Pick and place automation, and also I think another robotic company is called Soft Robotics too, and they are doing something very similar as well, just picking and place, right? So yeah. So Anything from you, Mike?
No, I mean, I think that's the big problem. I just don't know. Like, I don't know that I would start. Like, I feel like that's a problem a lot of people are looking at, and a lot of
Yeah.
money is being thrown
Oh
at
yeah,
already.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So a few company in this domain I find interesting is third wave AI. Actually, they try to automate a forklift. So like design like autonomous forklift, right? So those are pretty interesting. The reason I find it interesting is because actually it's not because of like what they try to do, it's actually because the approach to autonomy, right? And they're actually using shared autonomy. So that means like whenever the forklift get into trouble and like something it cannot do, it actually allow a human operator to take over and then do the task. So I found it a little bit unique because a lot of robotic companies try to go for autonomous or right away, right? And which might be a very challenging because robot, it's hard to get to be 100% autonomous all the time, right? So so
Yeah, no.
so that's why you give me that's because in this warehouse environment is very, even though warehouse is structured already, sometimes there's a lot of unpredictable events that happen, right? So the robot can always get in trouble. Those edge cases, the robot can get into trouble, right? So
Also, third wave hits a market. So there's already things like Kiva systems, and there's other large scale warehouse robotic systems where you basically build the whole warehouse like around them. Like the physical environment's engineered very specially for it, but there's a lot of smaller warehouses that exist that were, not built for that stuff. So if you can make if you can just sell something that's a fancy forklift that can go into a normal warehouse environment, maybe with some minimal additions of some sensors, some markings, some, things to help the robot localize and whatnot.
yeah,
Like if you can adapt normal stuff without having to rebuild it all, that's a big potential market.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
if it's not as efficient as Kiva overall,
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
cut you off.
No, I was going to say that getting into like talking about third wave and share autonomy. Actually, right now there's a lot of like delivery robots, right? Like you go to a restaurant, you order the food, and robot brings to you like Kiwi bot and on the Starship technology. Those robotic company actually they are using something like very similar as well, like share autonomy. Like when robot fails in the street, right? Because is when you get a robot on the street in the real world, is really they have a very high chance of failing, right? So they always have like remote operator taking over control as well. So I guess the point is that you don't need to be 100% autonomous, right? So 95% or 90% might be good enough for you to start a business in this domain. Yeah.
Yeah. Because rather than every single delivery being, completely executed by a human, you just have one human can manage 10 robots just stepping in when they need to.
Yep. Nice. Any other industry that you think might be good for robotics? Do you have any favorite industry? I'm not sure if I asked you that question already.
well, I mean, I talked about like medical. I mean, there's already like in hospitals, there's like opportunities to like bring, like deliver medication, deliver food. Like, I mean, those types of things. Like, there are already robots doing that type, and it's it's similar to like restaurants. It's just a question of like, but I feel like in hospitals, there's even maybe more of the HCI problem. So like, I mean, obviously patients can be scared and lonely, and it could help having like a human deliver that type of stuff. But I mean, there also, I think, are like potentially greater advantages because like a robot, like you can ensure a robot is like fully sanitized between like every delivery, like very quickly. And so there may be like opportunities to be more sure there isn't like infection being spread.
Oh yeah, actually, there's a lot. during the pandemic, there are quite a few robotic company does that, right? Just
Right.
I think there's a Chinese company doing that, American company doing that. You know, they go in the room, I sanitize things for you, right? I put some kind of UV light beams on top of the robot and just go in and sanitize in the room. So, all right. For you guys, do you guys aware of the 3Ds of robotics, right?
Dirty, dangerous, and
what?
I forget. Isn't it something? Okay, hold on.
Okay.
I thought it was repetitive or boring or something like that, but I can't think of what word you're.
Let's start with the D.
Yeah.
Got it.
Dangerous, and dull.
Dull.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So so starting with dirty, I mean, one robot is called. One company is doing like. ViaBot is actually doing like cleaning like what that for you? Like garages, like just autonomous sweepers basically on the street, right? So those companies, yeah. But I guess one company excite me is that I'm excited like about is Dusty Robotics in construction, right? I think they're doing something actually pretty cool. I think construction domain is there's many opportunity for robotics, but for Dusty, they actually do like they translate, for example, your construction site, they design something on a some kind of tool like layouts for the construction, right? And then instead of human like going into the physical environment to draw out like draw on the physical lines on the floors, right? They have robot basically print out from getting a 2D schematics from the designer, and the robot just draw the layouts for you on the floor. So anyway, so.
Oh, that's interesting. So like construction in general, I think there's a lot of stuff that would be super hard to automate, but this is a nice sub application, right? So they have one, you sell one robot that basically marks on a concrete or wood or whatever the base is to kind of plan out for people where they need to put stuff. Yeah. That's a nice little use case.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of company working on try to automate those like bulldozers, stuff like that. So those are other. I guess those are a little bit more obvious, right? But what Dusty does is a little bit. I think they actually, they probably talk to the customer, figure out what is the challenging, and then what's easy for a robot to do, right? So that's why I like to add a D to the 3D robotics, which is dumb. If it's some very dumb task, maybe this is very similar to DAO already, but yeah. But I guess dumb is more like something is very easy for his robot to do, right? You don't need to be very super sophisticated AI.
And and unlike driving a bulldozer, there's a lot less safety concerns with it marking a floor.
Yeah. And what do you guys think about security robotics, like patrolling?
Boom, easy. I mean, I don't think the market cap for them is going to be huge, but that's an easy win, because the biggest thing about the security is deterrence. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I've never worked in the security field, but I feel like deterrence is most of what you need in security, right? And a robot with cameras all on it streaming live is a very big deterrent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess I feel like, so what's the difference between, well, I mean, I guess this could be a benefit, I guess, if you just have like a double robot with like a 360 camera on it or something. Like, I guess, what's the difference between just a robot with a camera versus a camera? Like, I mean, I guess my thinking is a double, like people, I guess, have the, like, okay, you can see a physical thing monitoring you, so it isn't like invasion of privacy, or like you're aware that you're being watched more so than just like we put cameras everywhere and watch you.
Well, I mean, there's about camera it's not fixed, right? It can move around, right?
Right. So I mean, I guess is this. So I mean, there's the patrolling aspect, yes, but I mean, what's the difference between, like, what's going to make someone pay for a robot with a 360 camera that roams versus like getting 3 cameras to cover the entire area?
Well, good. Yeah, that's right. But I think Matt did say it's physical, right? The deterrence, the camera, it might be hard, but maybe sometimes the criminal they don't see in the camera, right?
Yeah.
They're not aware. Maybe the camera is not there. And a robot is a physical thing, right? If something happened to you, alarm bell can ring, right? So,
Mhm.
and you design it big, so it's like, the physical presence. I think it gives you more deterrence, right? You say, oh, okay, there's a robot there,
And I
robot
don't
cop,
think
right? So
and I don't think these have to be crazy expensive. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, installing let's say you own or manage some relatively important building, right? And you need to keep the riffraff out, whatever. If you installing like 6 cameras around and wiring to them, I mean, it's probably going to be cheaper than the robot, but I don't think it's going to be that much cheaper because we're talking
Mhm.
about a very simple robot, just
Mhm.
some wheels, it drives around. Like this is like close to as easy of a robot as you can get. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I just would say, like, I guess there's part of me that says the physical presence could be more of a deterrence, but at least in the near term, and maybe this would change, particularly if you actually like enforce like that, like destruction of property or something. But
Yeah.
are people going to be more likely to just be like, oh, look, it's like look at this robot roaming around like in this random place, like I'm gonna like break it. Like,
Yeah, you break it, and assuming it's connected to some kind of alarm system, right? And then the cop or something, police or security guard can come right away, right?
yeah, I assume it'd
I
start making loud lights and siren noises, when you get close and it's like, hey, get out of here.
Yeah, or in the future you can put an arm on it and I don't know, carry a gun or something, right?
no, that's fair. It's just
Okay.
yeah, well, the gun is gonna take a few years,
A
but
taser maybe.
I get well, yeah. I just don't know like how many bird scooters are ruined, per day or something like. Yeah, I mean, I guess
Yeah, but
people.
they don't have, they don't know they don't have cameras on there, right? So
They're intended to be directly used by people. Rather, this, I
Mhm.
assume, would, if anyone who didn't have like the passcode or whatever try to touch it, it would be a big problem.
exactly. Get electric shock or something like that.
I
Anyway,
think it
yeah.
would be less violent than she was implying, but
no.
Yeah.
again, I did say I don't think the market for this would be enormous because I think like most places, a camera would be fine as all you need. But I could definitely see for some places it's being nice.
Yeah.
Anything where security is like a more serious thing, where like that's a priority.
Yeah. I guess I mean you could put this like public parks, right, during the night, and like or campus, right? Like
Right.
for example, Home Park, right? Maybe like in Atlanta, Home Park is a very dangerous area next to Georgia Tech, right? So it's getting nicer now, but you can put a robot there, right? So you can roam around, right?
Right. No, I mean, that is, I like the idea, and honestly, I would like to see it enacted. It's just I do just question about like how they would be, like how the
Yeah.
robots would be received, like by people it encountered, at least initially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know in public spaces. I don't think people would like this much. I was
Gotcha.
thinking up in like private areas where you're
Oh
not
yeah.
supposed to be there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate that because I mean, a lot of people don't appreciate just a camera in public, much less like a roaming robot. So,
Yeah.
which is a bunch of cameras.
Yeah, there are two companies working in this domain. I found is the Nice Scope, and then the other one is Cobalt Robotics. Actually, Cobalt Robotics is started by a Georgia Tech alumni. He was actually in the PhD program, and then he graduated. I guess he started this company, so it's pretty cool.
Did he overlap with us?
No, he overlapped with me.
Oh, okay.
I think he graduated before you started or something like that. But yeah, I think he's doing something more than security now. But I think but that was the initial idea, security guard as well. So
no, I mean, I think it's a good idea, and you're right. The physical may be a better deterrent than the cameras, but it's just sort of weighing cost and. Like, will they be destroyed?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
If it's the sort of place that could have a security guard,
Mhm.
that's, I feel like, the place that this might make sense. Because even if you might still want a security guard around, like, I mean, these things would be a fraction of the cost of paying like a person's salary, or should be a lot less than 1 year's salary for a person.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I guess it's just if it's a place like that and someone is legitimately trying to like break in and steal something, is like a physical robot like more of a deterrent than cameras at that point? Because that person is literally like disabling cameras, like, you know, like they're going through a process. Like there is something they want in there. Where I feel like the type of crime that like those types of robots may deter is like, yeah, like a criminal like in a like on the street or in the park, like, you know, this robot sort of roaming around, and they're not gonna act
Yeah.
because they know they're on camera.
Yeah, I mean, robot is not really going to do counter, right? Even someone really get into this building right away. I mean, robot as I think just basically call a human, and then human just come, right?
Right.
Is that? Yeah.
Well, I still honestly probably the best or the company that I would see doing a better job of this is that company you talked about a couple of
Sentry
weeks ago.
AI.
Yeah. Where
Just
it's just
camera.
like they have a
Yeah.
bunch of cameras and they're like basically doing like AI on the images and saying like this person's not supposed to be here. Like
Yeah.
so.
Cool. All right. So last company I want to talk about is called Robust AI. Basically, they try to develop like instead of, as I think as we talked about earlier, like robot autonomy is very hard, right? So I think what they try to develop is instead of like go for a specific application, they try to develop some autonomy software for, I think, for all other robotic company you can use. And then the other company, yeah. So and actually, Robust AI is started by Henrik Christensen
Oh,
and like Ronnie Brook. Actually, they started together. Actually, so
Oh, damn.
yeah,
Titans.
Georgia Tech connection there again.
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mac, this company potentially you could apply if you want to go.
I mean, a lot of the companies you've listed today, I'm going to keep this list around and be like, look at all these places I could work, except for the ones I don't think are a good idea.
Well, I mean, another reason I like it because instead of like try to go into like one, so instead of try to get into one industry, one vertical, they try to do it horizontally, right? So
Mhm.
they create one solution that everybody in robotic industry can use. I think that's another way of to thinking about like what business you should start as well, right? So
It's
so
kind of
that
like they're
yeah.
trying, so there's a new industry, right? And most
Yeah.
companies are trying to be like provide the end products of for this new industry, like robotic solutions, while they're trying to provide to the companies that are providing the solutions, right? They're like, it's like they're being
Exactly.
the supplier. It's like being the person who sells batteries when Tesla blows up with
Yeah.
electric cars, right? Like you're trying to
Mhm.
get further up in the pipeline. But in
Yeah.
this case, is that going to work? Do you have any details? I mean, not to get overly technical, but do you have any details about what exactly their AI is doing or how it works? Or, what does this mean to say a general AI that other companies can leverage, right?
No. Yeah. No. I'm assuming they're doing something pretty, I don't know, pretty advanced. So I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, I want like I'm looking at their website now. I mean, are they, you know how there's like bids like company like maybe Deloitte might be an example, sort of like they have sort of like technical people
Mm-hmm.
and they sort of lend their technical people and like solutions to
Yeah,
like other
consulting, right?
yeah, it's yeah, in a way it's consulting.
And they
Is
do
that
implementation as well.
yeah, but I guess is this company like maybe designing like they have like a very high level framework and then they're more doing like a consulting type role, or
I don't think they're doing consulting. They probably is like ROS, like robotic operating system in a way, right? But they are not the operating system. They are a specific intelligent like autonomy making decisions, right? So I think those are, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what they are working on, but they are working on software instead of like working on the robotic physical solution, right? So
I wonder if it's kind of like the ROS software library, because so ROS is the robot operating system's really a middleware, but one of the key features of it's like all the libraries people have made that use ROS and you can easily grab, right? You know, things to already do perception and path planning and other SLAM and other hard tasks, you know, and just sort of use that as like a chunk and say, hey, I got this module. So I'm wondering if they have something similar, because a lot of these companies we talked about are probably rewriting to solve the same problems,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
How many of them are hand engineering some motion planning systems for the robots to drive around, right?
Yeah.
Probably a bunch. I don't know. So maybe maybe this company is trying to be like, okay, companies aren't going to use ROS open source code. It's not up to high enough level. You don't have guarantees or whatever. Maybe they're like, we're going to make a really high quality set of general solutions, and then especially if they're getting paid as like a service, they could help you tune that. Like, here's a generic motion planning framework. Here's how we'll help you teach you how you tune it for your specific problem, but you don't have to rewrite everything from scratch.
Yeah, and as it's on the website, they say like developing the first industrial grade cognitive engine, right? They call it like common sense AI, right? So basically, higher level decision making, right? For example, autonomous cars, when they see a situation turning left or right, those decisions, I think these are the kind of a software AI they want to create that you can just plug into your robot, use it, making those high level decisions, right? And lower level decisions are probably taken care of by other lower level software, right? So
the common sense. So to be fair, everything I just said a moment ago was speculation, because I'm just trying to think of what would make sense. But common sense AI sounds like a marketing buzz term with no real meaning.
yeah,
I'm going to be
of
honest.
Of course,
and that's
it's a
fine.
website, right?
Yeah, they need their marketing, but
yeah,
I don't think you can just plug and play and it'll be like, oh, whether a car needs to turn left and right? Like, that's not the sort of problem you can just have like generically solved.
Gotcha. Anyway, so the other company that actually I found it interesting is called Apply AI. It's Apply Intuition. So what they do is they actually, instead of creating AI software, they actually create like simulation like for autonomous cars, right? So for example, a few years ago, self-driving had been like, it was exploding. And then each company, when they start, they have to create their own simulations environment to simulate, different situations, training the cars to drive. And this company just like, okay, again, instead of starting one vertical, they actually apply doing a simulation so that every single company in that industry can use, right? So
yeah, no, this is I'm kind of repeating myself now, but I think as the robotics industry sort of expands outside of its original factory arm robot kind of origins, there's a huge amount of repeated work being done, including creating simulations. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. Companies that can provide a high quality, licensed product with standards for other companies to use. Those are probably good ideas.
So I think that's it for me. And do we need to talk about sex robots?
No. Oh, I don't feel like talking about that today, personally. Yeah, let's save that for another day.
That's what I thought too. So either way. Anyway, so anything else you guys think I should talk about? I think
you did a really good job finding all these companies.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's because I was applying for jobs. So I was looking for, so I was like, okay, I have this collection of robots, business and companies, and then why don't I just talk about it, right? So yeah.
Ooh, so are we gonna do what we did before? It's pick our favorites. What's gonna be the most successful?
Actually, no. Actually, I want to the remaining few minutes. I want to ask you like, who is better suited to innovate in robotics? Maybe like someone like with the expertise in robotics, like that you like study robotics, have a robotic PhD, or maybe someone's outside robotics. Maybe it could be an artist, a business person, or someone musician. I don't know. What do you think? Like, who is the better suited to innovate in robotics? Like experts or non-experts? It's an opinion question.
Well, I would say the best is like someone who, like a team, right? Someone who has expertise in an industry where there is a problems robots are well suited for, and then someone who can actually deliver that solution.
So you're saying the experts?
I guess if the experts, well, I mean, I'm saying like the expert needs to know the problem. So if they have someone who can tell them the problem, sure.
Okay, what about you, Matt?
I mean, I don't want to be too predictable, but I'm gonna have to say the expert. So robotics right now, like they're an advanced tool that can do some things well, but also has a lot of limitations. This is how I'd frame this question. Think about it. So, like, I think experts are the ones who can have the background to know what can and cannot be done easily to potentially fit that into a problem, right? So, like, it's kind of like saying, like, who is the best to build like a very large wooden structure, like the artist or the craftsman who works with wood, right? Slash engineer or something. And like the artist might have a good idea on what might look nice, but like figuring out how to make a large structure that supports itself, you need some knowledge about the materials and how they work, how you connect them and things like that, right? So that's the background knowledge you need to do to design something that'll actually hold itself up. So the expert, but obviously, like Mike said, to really be productive, you need to be involved in working with someone who knows the problem space, like what you want to do. It's like the other piece of the puzzle, but I don't think you can get around really having an expert in the area to figure out how and what you can solve.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I would say sometimes, I guess, depends how you define innovation. Sometimes I feel like experts in specific area might be, sometimes if you get too much into one area, you might become a tunnel vision, right? And even though, you are improving the technology, like robotic technology, but what you are working on is a incremental change, right? You are focusing on the form in a way, but you're not changing the function of something, right? Maybe you're just make it better incrementally, but you are not doing a dramatic change of maybe something that someone need to be outside of the robotic to see, right? So for example, like one example a lot of people like to give is like rolling bags, right? Like those like luggage, put the wheels on the back. Like we have the wheel for 2,000 years, right? And we have bag for 2,000 years as long as people carrying stuff around. But only in like recently, like 1970, someone put those two and two together, right? You change, even though the bags have been and the wheel have both improving over time, but actually the innovation of putting those two together was innovating in a way, right? So you change the function instead of just improving the bag, right, over time.
Yeah, but to push back against that slightly, I mean, rolling luggage is great for things like airports, which are relatively modern.
Gotcha.
Environments. Like I don't use a rolling bag to walk around the cities like people have been walking around cities for 2,000 years. And I see almost no one use rolling bags for that. So I'm not saying you're entirely wrong, but I feel like that wasn't like just people were sleeping on this great invention in the year 1200. It just wasn't practical.
Maybe I was just giving a bad example.
Yeah, so. Fair enough. Sorry, not to be. I might be a little nitpicky here.
No, you're good. You're good. That's why. Anyway, that was totally an opinion question. I don't think there's a right and wrong answer. I think the main point is to sometimes instead of focusing one area, basically we need to be more multidisciplinary, which is kind of robotic is kind of inherently is anyway. So
what's interesting is I think related to this. So I think there's two types of people in research. There's the tool makers and the tool users. And I would actually say the most researchers, most papers are not really showing innovative new creations. Like they're not making something new. They're using something in a different way. So like there's been anyone who's within AI knows there's been like a deep learning boom for several years now. maybe more than several years. I'm trying to remember when it started, but like, so there's been tons and tons of paper on deep learning, which are a type of neural networks being applied to different problems. And the vast majority of them, they're not really making any sort of new insights into fundamentally how deep learning works or how to develop it. They're like, wow, here's how you can use deep learning for this. And I would say, like, I mean, that's literally, you know, showing application. These are people like trying to figure out all the different ways they could use this tool. Anyway, point is, when you talk about experts being too narrow in terms of incrementally developing, I actually think that's a minority of researchers who are like trying to fundamentally improve the technology versus using it. So I think there's a lot of researchers who are well positioned to say, you know, what could we solve with this? Because that's literally what they do. They just try to apply things to different areas and see if they can make it work, if they can make it fit.
So which one do you think is more important, tool makers or tool users?
I mean, they're both important. I would say the tool makers have a harder job. It's much easier to learn how the stuff works from someone else and apply it. And I mean, that's not necessarily easy, right? These are still people who are very trained and spend a lot of time learning about them, but coming up with the fundamental tools is harder and probably gets us farther. So I'd say the tool makers are more important.
All right. That's good. Last word from Mike?
No, I mean, I was just thinking about it. I mean, I don't know that, like, how much, like, people who make tools, I guess it depends on the area and the tool, but like sometimes I don't know how much like pure research goes into that as much as just like, I feel like the job is maybe a little bit more formal. Like, you know, it's more it's more about like formalizing like the measurements of an instrument or something and showing like that the instrument will perform at a certain level, you know, all of the time. And so I don't like, so I think it's more, like I say, I think it's more about formalizing the process than like, you know,
I think you're taking tool very literal. Like I was thinking tools like deep neural networks is a tool you can use, right? Like
sure.
I mean, yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, that's good. I think that's good for today. Let's take us off life support.
Okay.